Hello everyone, this is Philosophy 67, Political Philosophy. We are doing week 3. And remember that this is in part 1 of the course that goes from week 1 to week 4. The name for this part 1, is Sovereign Power and Dialectical Subversions. Okay, so in weeks 1 and 2 we started with Hobbes, chapters from Leviathan. So we saw the formulation of the theory of sovereign power, sovereignty, and then we also looked at Carl Schmitt, sections from political theology. Sovereign is he who decides on the exception. That's the outset, famous outset of political theology. And then I also asked you to read a chapter from my book, Humanity and the Enemy, on reconsidering the friend and enemy logic, which actually comes in a different book by Carl Schmitt called The Concept of the Political, right? So in any case, today we start the second part of this section, of this first section, which is dialectical subversions. We do today read a brief but difficult text by by Hegel, and then next time we'll do some Karl Marx as well. This is the book from which we are reading today, right? Phenomenology of Spirit, and we are reading a very short section, usually known as the Master and Slave dialectic, in the book by Hegel, as you see in the text that you have as well, is Lordship and Bondage, same idea. And actually, the whole title is Independence and Dependence of Self Consciousness. Think about it. Well, independence, dependence, we more or less know. Self consciousness, before this section in the book, in Phenomenology of Spirit, Hegel, right, tells us that self consciousness is a desire, right? So one of the points that I want to highlight today is this of a desire, then also work, and also fear, right, and the fear of death. So, but in any case, and we will see this subversion, we know this reversal of what? Reversal of ultimately, this is very important, right? Relations of power. There is a relation of power between these two moments, these two consciousness, self-consciousness. There is a relation of power between that we see in Hegel, lordship and bondage, the master and the slave. Then I ask you in the journal to apply this to other situations that we will see next time with Marx as well. For example, right, capital and labor, or more generally, the boss and the worker, or then you can apply this to all situations in which you have relations of power, gender relations, male, female, in the, say, traditional patriarchal family, community, society, or the colonizer and the colonized. We will get into that later again in a more specific way. But in any case, this is actually what I ask you to do in your journal entry. Discuss this section, these pages by Hegel, and try to also apply this idea of this reversal of precisely again power relations, right? Someone who has the upper hand and then loses that, basically, right? I mean, the idea of ultimately subversion, to subvert, right? And therefore the idea of a radical change, of a revolution. And the master, loses his grip on power. The slave, becomes independent and self-conscious, and it is at that time that he or she becomes independent, right? And therefore, that doesn't mean that then the slave becomes the master and the master the slave. I mean, it's not this automatic type of reversal, right? But probably what we have in Hegel is the elimination of the paradigm of sovereign power as such, sovereignty to an extent. I mean, sovereignty, remember, sovereign power, sovereign means always above, right? Supreme power, superior, above. That's the meaning of it's in the word sovereign. And so that doesn't mean that again there is a simple mere reversal again whereby whoever was in the inferior position then gets in the superior position and vice versa. It's not this, you know. It would be simple-minded, and that's not the case. Okay, what we have is rather the like I said, the destruction, the elimination of the sovereign paradigm. The paradigm of domination, that's what sovereignty is, the paradigm whereby someone is in a position of submission, right? So that's what you should think about. And for your discussion board entry, write on especially the question of fear. That's a more informal thing, always with a relation to Hegel, right? But the question of fear. You see, the question is already there. So let's actually again I don't want this to be too long. I told you that this self-consciousness is desire, right? He says that before the text that you have. Desire in general. So, in any case, you see at the beginning of your text, it's highlighted, right? Self consciousness exists in and for itself when and by the fact that it so exists for another. That is, it exists only in being acknowledged. Now, think about this. This moment of recognition, acknowledgement is important in Hegel, right? I mean, the idea that, and that's a very, commonsensical idea, if you will. If I say, for example, that I have some type of authority, right? I mean, this works only insofar as it is acknowledged by someone, it is recognized as such, and it is precisely here that you can see already the mechanism, the way in which these relations of power work. Let me say also a few words on the question of the word dialectic that I put in this, because that's the way in which this section is usually known. The master and slave dialectic. What is dialectic? It's there would be so much to say, but basically the idea that think about that. You have something, you have a position, something is posited as such, right? But any position can be negated, right? You can get to the negation of that position, right? For example, if you take the letter A, right? What's the opposite of A? What's the negation of A? Not A. But this dialectical process is always there in reality, in life. So A doesn't stay always the same. It will turn into its opposite, not A. But again, this process continues. So what is the opposite of not A? It will be not A, right? But think about that. I mean, this is a movement whereby, the initial position is, yes, overcome, is superseded, but it is still included in the new position, which is now a negation. Not A includes A, but it is the negation of A. Not A includes not A, but it is the negation of not A, and it includes also the original A. So there is this movement through negation, right, which is the dialectical process, right, whereby things change precisely into their opposite, but whatever was there to begin width is maintained at some level, right? I mean, it is, this is the idea of the sublation. I don't want to go too deep into that, but I hope that this was clear. So, in relations of power, right, the master doesn't have to stay always the master, right? I mean, he is the master insofar as he is acknowledged as such, but as soon as the other gets to a degree of self consciousness, and we will see in the case of Hegel, it will be through work that this happens, then this acknowledgement is no longer there. The master is no longer the master, right? So, I mean, I hope that in a simplistic way that I made this clear, because otherwise I know it's difficult, but it is on the basis of this acknowledgement that relations of power persist for some time. But again, I hope I made this clear enough. They are not, let's say, written in stone. I mean, again, there can be a reversal, situations in which, and this is not only, of course, at the personal level between two self consciousnesses, but at the collective level as well. Revolution, and think about not only the French Revolution, right, that started in 1789, but then around the same time, the Haitian Revolution, which is usually not spoken about maybe as much as the French Revolution, but during the Haitian Revolution, right, you have a former slave, Toussaint Louverture, who becomes the leader of liberated Haiti. Right, I mean, there is this possible reversal, and really, I like to say, elimination of previous relations of power, right? I mean, they change completely. But that doesn't mean that they are, they disappear. They constitute, right? They make up the possibility of the new position, which is the negation of the earlier previous one. So you have the position, the negation of that position, and then to speak, like Hegel, with Hegelian language, the negation of the negation. All right. So, in any case, so that's very interesting in itself. I hope it's clear. Ask questions. I'm sure you might have some, but I already spoke about the main concepts that I wanted to highlight: desire, work, fear. You find in this section the word desire, for example, on page 112, and that speaks of the movement, the double movement of the two self-consciousnesses, right? That's where, and then the middle term, right, and the vanishing of the mediation, the vanishing mediation. And on page 113, there is the moment of, again, acknowledgement, recognition. The word recognized is used at the top of page 113, one being only recognized, the other only recognizing, right? The one that is recognized as such, the master. The master doesn't recognize the slave, or again, all similar relations of power, right? The boss and the work, and so on and so forth, okay? And so then you had to read, focus again, especially on those highlighted parts, okay? And at the end of page 113, at the bottom, there is this interesting moment, right? It is, insofar as it is the action of the other, because there is this struggle. There is a struggle, a fight, and a fight to the death between, the two self-consciousnesses. Can be applied to anything, like I said, gender relations in the typical, right, patriarchal society. So, insofar as it is the action of the other, each seeks the death of the other. It doesn't have to be, the physical death, but any type of, when, for example, someone falls into complete dependence and therefore submission in a situation of capture, right, in relation to another, then that is equal to the same as death, right? I mean, so that's basically the point, right? So then there is this risk, this taking of one's own life. Page 114, the top. He speaks precisely about this life and death struggle that I highlighted already. They, the two moments, two people, two self-consciousnesses must engage in this struggle, which is also, we will see then next time with Marx, the same as the struggle between right, capital and labor, between the capitalists, the workers, and so on, right? So they must engage in this struggle, for they must raise their certainty of being for themselves to truth, both in the case of the other and in their own case. And I like this one particular. It is only, right? It is okay. This is page 114, and it is only through staking one's life that freedom is won. I mean, great. Think about this idea. I mean, if you don't, if you're not ready to risk your life, stake your life, then you cannot win freedom. For self-consciousness, its essential being is not just being. In any case, this idea of therefore freedom as well, in addition to desire, work, and fear of death, independence, freedom, right? But freedom is won only when one is ready to risk something, one's life, right? Otherwise, so that's the exit from servitude, right? That's basically the idea. And he continues, the individual who has not risked her life may well be recognized as a person, but she has not attained to the truth of this recognition as an independent self-consciousness. Okay, similarly, just as each stakes her own life, so each must seek the other's death, the death of the other, for it values the other no more than itself. Okay, remember, it's not necessarily the idea of a violent physical kind of death, but it's might be that as well, but it's certainly more than that. Okay, so there is this superseding and so on and so forth, and then it is on page 115 that the two figures are introduced: the Lord, the master, and the bondsman, the slave, right? Again, remember, the capitalist, the boss, and the worker, right? The man in the male-centered society, patriarchal society, and the female, the woman, and so on and so forth, okay? So then the question of desire is introduced as well on this page, and again, I can't read everything, but the Lord at the end at the bottom of page 115 is right. That's what the Lord is the power over this thing. It has power. The Lord has power, right? And then so this power is going to be precisely the object of this reversal, this subjection. As I said, think in terms of relations. So that's what power is. It's always a matter of relations, right? And then on page 116 he speaks about the bondsman who works. Now the question of work is as well a very important moment. The bondsman works on it. I mean, and by working on something, you change it, you transform it. I mean, basically, in a simplistic way, but what happens here? The desire of the Lord, the master, right? The master has some desire, whatever, they must be satisfied. But he's not going to work on it himself. He will have the worker, the slave, the bondsman, do the work for him. So he only then, gets the result of this work and satisfies his desire, but he doesn't do it. Think, I mean, maybe a simplistic, simple-minded, but real, example of this would be in the typical family, the father and husband, the man who wants, I don't know, to eat. But he's not going to cook the meal right himself. He will have the wife do it for him, so he satisfies his desire, but doesn't do the work. Who does the work and who transforms the thing from raw to cooked, whatever, is the person who does the work. I mean, is the woman in the typical traditional, right, family, society, right? So that's an example, but this can be applied to anything. The idea that he or she who works transforms something. I hope that this is clear, right? Changes something. And it is precisely in this that this person realizes at one point, gets to the awareness that there is power there. Because the real power is in those who do the work and change the thing, and not in the person who is only going to get the products, the objects of that work and satisfies his desire, right? So, I mean, I hope that this is clear. It is there that the moment of power, the awareness of power is, becomes visible, becomes apparent, and therefore there can be this reversal when the slave, the bondsman, and so on, the worker, the woman in the typical traditional, male-centered society is able to look the other in the eye. Then, the reversal of power or relations of power can happen. It's already there, right? I mean, I hope that this is clear. So, in any case, let me read it. I don't want this to be too long. Desire, page 116, failed to do this because of the thing's independence, right? I mean, the thing has, I don't know, uncooked, whatever, meat, whatever, vegetables, whatever it is, or a raw material that you had to wood that you will use to make, I don't know, a bed, and so on and so forth, right? But the thing has its own independence. They must be appropriated through work, okay? But the Lord, who has interposed the bondsman between it and himself. There is no direct relationship that the Lord has, immediate relationship to the thing, but it is mediated through the work of the worker, the bondsman, and so on. So I go back to the reading. The Lord takes to himself only the dependent aspect of the thing and has the pure enjoyment of it. The aspect of its independence he leaves to the bondsman who works on it. Right, that's what I said. So this is really the moment in which things start changing again. And do change. I can't go into that more deeply. We don't have much time. But there was one point that I want to perhaps highlight. Well, on page 117, I highlighted many points. Read that. I mean, there are beautiful moments there too. And then I read from the second paragraph 4 from page 117. This consciousness has been fearful by the bondsman, right? Fearful not of this or that particular thing or just at odd moments, but its whole being has been seized with dread, for it has experienced the fear of death, the absolute Lord. In that experience, it has been quite unmanned, has trembled in every fiber of its being, and everything solid and stable has been shaken to its foundation. It is then, the moment in which one can stake one's own life, risk one's own life. Page 118, through work. Work is again a very important moment. Through work, however, the bondsman becomes, I said this before, conscious of what he, she truly is. I mean, through work, I understand that I had the power, therefore, right? I mean, when I work, desire, then and so this is the way in which things change, and the negative significance of fear. But I want to read one more thing through the end of bottom of page 114, 18, and then over to page 119, and I end there, right? I mean, through this rediscovery of himself, again, by himself, herself by herself, themselves by themselves, the bondsman realizes that it is precisely in their work, right? Wherein they seem to have only, I'm changing the pronouns, only an alienated, we'll go back to alienation next time, existence that they acquire a mind of their own. Work, remember, right? And I finish here. Yeah, then he speaks about obedience, and then at one point you find on page 119, you know, uh, it has, if it has not experienced absolute fear but only some lesser dread, the negative being has remained for it something external. Its substance has not been infected by it and by it. Sorry, through and through. Okay, I hope that I read the section, also the passage where he says, "But you will find, but that it is through work that you change the thing, that you shape, right, the thing, and that's an important moment too." Uh, and so I hope that this is clear, right? I mean, at these moments of again fear of death, work, and the essential fundamental moment of desire, which is ultimately life. And let me know if there are questions. Do write your discussion board entry on fear, more informal, more general entry, and then give a sense of this difficult but interesting. Really, remember, focus on, keep in mind this question and this framework, if you will, paradigm of power relations. That's what we are talking about. We will be talking about this also next time with Karl Marx, and this is, not in a simplistic and automatic way. It is, something that goes against um, uh, the idea of sovereignty we saw in the first 2 weeks of this class, the traditional understanding of sovereignty, of domination, the idea that domination can be eliminated, right? That there may be a moment of radical reversal, that there can be subversions. Okay? So, see you next time. Thank you.